Elemental Escape, my puzzle project. This is the main menu of the project. It's got 3 buttons. Quit button, which will quit the game. Controls, which will show the basic controls of the game. Back button, that will take you back to the main menu. And begin, which will play the game. It goes straight into a cutscene where the player is waking up slowly. They lean up, they look around, and then a collapse happens. After the collapse, the door falls down, player gains control, and the player can now move about. At the top left, we've got a health and deaths counter. At the top middle, you've got a current objective, which changes throughout the level, with box collisions to help hint the player throughout, and a timer at the top right. We've also got follow cameras throughout the level, just to add a bit more narrative and story to the game. If I go through here, the objective changes because there's a box collision here, and it will slowly hint the player to how to figure out each puzzle. I've got a save station here, which is a checkpoint. You get a new checkpoint save notification on the HUD, and throughout the level are save stations where the player can respawn if they die. If I go over to this door, there's a button here. A little tooltip comes up at the bottom. This is a button, press the interact key E to activate. A personnel card is required to open this door. The tooltip only comes up once every time something new appears, so if I go back over to it, it won't appear, and if I press E on it, it will say personnel card required. So if I go over to this personnel card over here, it will now say I have it in my character blueprint, so now I can press this and the door will open. Leading to the next area with a corridor with lights that turn on in a pattern. And then it activates some gas emitters and damages the player. So the player must quickly make their way through this door. Once going through that door, the music starts to add a bit more of a puzzle element. This is very Portal 1 Level 1 like, with you've got the button pad, the door and the block. So if I go over to this block, the tooltip will appear, telling the player about the weighted block. I've got a pickup mechanic which the player can pick up, place on the button pad, which will then open the door. Checkpoint system. And then this is the mine room. So there's mines along the floor that if the player walks over, they die. You died screen with press R to respawn the last checkpoint. So I respawn here. And then at the top I've got a light system which shows the pattern and path of the safe route for the player to get through. The objective also hints at a safe path for the player. Once the player steps on the mines, they show which ones are safe. So now I know the path before me. So if I die, I can always make my way back to where I died before. So now I can see the path before. I know this is all safe, so I don't have to look up the top again. I've got a checkpoint here. I can go for that checkpoint. I've got a locked door there, and a lever type system over here. If I go over here, this lever looks like it does something tooltip. This lever actually disables the power in this area, so the lights will go off, these lights will go off, and the door will go off. I like this idea because when you turn this off, the door opens, but the player also has to think about the route they didn't save if they haven't made it before, which I just like the idea of. New checkpoint here in this room. I've got a platformy room with colour-coded keycard doors. These platforms move up and down slightly, just to make them look a bit more nicer. These are colour-coded keycards, the player can pick them up, and if they bring them over to the right colour-coded door, they'll open, and if they bring them over to the wrong one, they won't. Over here I've got a collectible pickup, which just adds a little buddy at the bottom left that the player can hide and unhide. Another little Easter egg type thing. If I go up these platforms, I've also got a health pickup up here, which the player can find throughout the game, which will just boost their health back up to max, because if you die, your health only gets 50%. The brown indicates a moving platform, where purple indicates still, and the green indicates a timed platform, so the player must jump off the timed platform, otherwise they take damage. They revert back to green after the player steps off. Red keycard to go through this door. There's also a force field down here, so the player can't take a keycard with them. this area, this is the first area where I introduce the element idea to the player. So through here is a fire source. If I use the button here, the laser will rise up. The player can now enter here. And if I walk into this fire, the player gains fire. So now I have access to fireballs. At the left you can see a fire icon to show fire. I've also got 4 fireballs there, which recharge over time, and a left click to fireball, which is primary fire. I've got some wood balls here that if I shoot, they can burn, and after a certain amount of time they'll destruct, allowing the player through. I've also got some elemental hazards in each level. So here I've got water puddles that if the player enters, it will like extinguish their fire element and they have to go back and get it. Here I've got some stairs that are broken and the player must find a way up to that door there with wooden boards. I've got some barrels here which have a warning sign, and I've also got a switch here just in case the player needs more barrels, which is a limit of the amount of barrels in play, so the player can't spam barrels. I'll use the barrel to shoot up, which I give the player good air control in the character settings, so they can easily get up here. Into this area, I've got some water with spikes in to show that the water is dangerous, so the player can't swim. Got some platform elements here. Onto the next area. I've got some fire jet engine type things, some stairs that end the wall, and some deactivated buttons. I've got an ice source here, similar to the fire source, but the player now has ice, which if you shoot water, it will freeze. And then I've got some buttons here, and after a certain amount of time, the ice will melt, so the player has to either stand on these jet engines or fall into the ice. The jet engines do fire out fire every now and again, so the player has to be careful whether or not they want to stand on it, because they could lose their ice element. I've activated 2 of the buttons, so there's 2 stairs out. If I activate the third stair will come out, and the player can now progress up to the next level. Into the next level, I've got a block up there, and a locked door over here, with a button pad here that the player must get that block there to that button pad to get that door open. So I've got these 2 circle red things that the player, if they step on, will work out that they're teleporters, which then take them to the opposite side of the room, where they can use this button to open these doors. But they have to open the doors in a certain pattern to get the block through. But first they have to get the block down. To get the block down, they have to fix this broken lever. So this is the same lever that was with the power system. So the player knows what it looks like, but they just have to find the right thing. So I've got 4 items here, and it's quite obvious which one the player has to pick up, place in, and now the player can press the block. Block will come down. Block's going along the conveyor now. The player has just to open the doors for the block to get through. So if I press this one, doors will go up, but the door behind closed. So the player has to make sure they have the block with them, otherwise they'll leave the block behind. Open this door, the other doors will go down, and the last set of doors, press here, and now I have access to the block to go on the button pad. This also introduces the player to conveyors, which is used in this level, which also introduces the earth element. So the earth element is vital for this level because the player can't make it without it, because it introduces petrify, which if I press shift, the screen goes grey and the player cannot move, but it does mean the player is invulnerable to damage. There's some health packs here as well to replenish the player's health. So if I step on this conveyor, there's spikes here, so the player's got to avoid them. The player can also petrify, but has got to be careful about the spikes, because the spikes can push them off into the holes. There's also these projectile turrets, which will damage the player if they're not petrified. And there's also a swinging hammer. With the earth element, the player also can't jump and is very slow, so it's got its advantages and disadvantages along with the other elements. Get this checkpoint, and into the last element, which is wind, which is the opposite of earth, which allows the player to jump higher, hold space and slow fall. It's also got an air dash and an air push. So there's a block up here with a button down there. So if I right click, it'll push the block down, in, and will open the floor. which then leads down to the player using their air abilities to dodge some hazards on the way down. If I hit them fans, I'll die, so I'll avoid them and reach the bottom. This is the end of my project at the moment, because I introduced all 4 elements as I wanted to. I'm happy with the blueprints I have, different elements as I wanted to.